Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. It's that time where we got to jump up to Salem and find out what's happening up there with the current legislative session going on. And our good friend, Dave Dotterrer, who's kind of been our hawk on keeping an eye on what's going on, give us an update on the budget process. Dave, nice to see you, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to be with you.
Well, listen, what happened?
Oh man, yesterday was a interesting day in this big marble palace. I can tell you that right now. Basically what happened was, of course, the Democrats have put forward their tax increase, and the Speaker of the House, Tina Kotek, thought she had the votes. I mean, she kept saying she had the votes, and she never had the votes. It takes a supermajority. She had to quote peel off some Republicans, and the Republicans all said, "Wait a minute, we can balance this budget without a tax increase. We can do this. You're getting a 10% increase in your revenue, and most Oregonians would be happy with a 10% increase in their revenue. And so why do you need a pay raise here? You don't need a pay raise." So, anyways, there was pushback, and it failed. They didn't get their tax increase.
All right. So what happens now?
Well, what happened was it was kind of an interesting little turn of events in the sense that there was some parliamentary maneuvering, which I know shocks everybody who's listening here, but there was parliamentary maneuvering that was going on. And so in the end, what the Republicans had put forward what's called a minority report, an alternative that said, look, there's part of this and a piece of this that is not really a tax increase in the sense, but there are corporations that are using offshore tax shelters, and they're hiding their money there. And what it basically said was, look, Department of Revenue, you need to go after these people and collect this money. And instead of $207, it's a small amount of money. But the point is, they put it forward as a minority report, as an alternative. Well, when it became obvious that the main bill was going to fail, the Democrats jumped on the alternatives. What you really had happen was the Democrats put forward a bill, it failed, or it didn't go anywhere, and in the end, the Republican bill is what passed off the floor, which is just this little piece of look. There's some people there's some corporations that are hiding their income in tax havens, and that money was specifically designated to go to mental health treatment.
Wow.
So that's what came off, and that now goes over to the Senate.
What's happening with PERS?
Well, what they did was they also passed through the PERS Light, which everybody knew was going to happen. This is their plan. This is the one they've shoved through without any real discussion about it, without any bipartisan talking and everything. And so it just was, they put this together and pushed it through. And there was 4 amendments that were offered to do certain things. One of them was, for example, let's take legislators and statewide officials out of PERS. That's a conflict of interest. I mean, you're voting on your own retirement system.
Right.
Guess what? I mean, I would like to think none of us would do this, but we all know what it's like. So, anyways, those are the kinds of things, and those fail.
All right, so they're going to come back with some form of tax increase. Do you see any weakening on the right side of the aisle to maybe go with some kind of tax increase?
You know what? What's happening right now is it's now over on the Senate side, which has got is very much there's going to be some negotiating now, because on the Senate side, you see on the House Democratic side, Tina Kotek is saying things like, look, this is in the rearview mirror. There's no more PERS. Well, the answer is there's got to be more PERS. And on the Senate Democrat side, there's the recognition that, you know what, we do need to do some more PERS, and we're going to talk about it. So in answer to your question, I would think that you're going to see some form of tax increase or some more revenue coming in. It sort of depends on how you define a tax increase. Some of it's going to be, it's not going to be the Democratic 66 and 67 plan that they put together. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
where's K through 12?
K through 12 is pretty much still where it was. In other words, they're the plan is to fund it at that much higher level. It's a 14% increase in it, and plus some PERS savings. Not enough PERS savings, obviously. Yeah. This is just my concern is this. It really is all about buying power. You can either give the K-12 more money, the hard dollars, and have PERS light, or you can give them actually a little less money, go with true PERS reform, and in the end, in buying power for your school district, you'll end up with more money. I mean, you'll be able to buy more teachers. You'll be able to have school days. But the PERS, or the connection between those two, is so critical, and there's just groups in here that are not. I mean, the public employees unions are fighting this tooth and nail. This is power politics. There's no doubt about it. And they're fighting this tooth and nail, and we're just going to see how this all turns out. It'll be interesting. Okay, well, here you are coming up on May 1st, and I know you guys normally like to get out of there sometime in June, but it doesn't appear at the moment you're anywhere close to settling anything. Well, let's just say that the ball is moving down the field. Whether it's moving the way exactly some people want it to move is not necessarily what's happening. Yeah, right. And you know what? I think there's a good chance that they will have to stay in session longer. That's a chance. But most of the people I talk to, at least on the Republican side, say, okay, if that's what it is, that's what it is. I mean, you do the right thing, and this is what we believe is the right thing. And if you got to stay a little longer, okay, we'll stay a little longer. It's the way it is. All right. Dave, thanks. I know you're on a tight schedule this morning. I want to value your time. Thanks for the update. Look forward to talking to you as the whole thing moves down the road a little bit further. Okay, great. Good talking to you. Take care. God bless. All right, Dave Dotterrer with us this morning from the Capitol up in Salem. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Well, one of the greats in the Christian Worldview has left us and is in heaven, and that is the late Chuck Colson. And his organization, the Chuck Colson Center for Christian Worldview, continues to do some great things. And one of the deals they have coming up is the William Wilberforce Award, which will be given out this coming weekend. And it's also the anniversary of the one-year passing of the late Chuck Colson. So earlier I had the chance to talk to Alan Terwilleger. He is the current president of the Chuck Colson Center for Christian Worldview, and he talks about both of these events. Join me now as we talk to Alan. Well, what an honor for us today to have a very special person with us today. We have Alan Terwilleger. He is the president of Chuck Colson Center for Christian Worldview. And Alan, thank you for the work that you do, and we together certainly miss your founder. No question about that.
Yeah, we sure do, Perry. In fact, it's been a year ago this past Sunday that he went on to be with the Lord. So,
wow. Well, thank you for continuing on his work. Listen, I want to talk about the recipient of the 2013 William Wilberforce Award coming up. First of all, what is the award? And then we'll talk about this year's recipient.
Well, it's an award that was established in 1988 by our founder, Chuck Colson. And the Wilberforce Award is presented annually by the Chuck Colson Center for Christian Worldview. The idea behind it is that it recognizes courageous leaders who are making an impact on the social ills of today. And those that are showing perseverance and selflessness and combating injustice and making a positive change to the values and character of society. And many of your viewers probably would know who William Wilberforce was. Right. He was an 18th century British parliamentarian who possessed well-reasoned arguments and debates and writings that helped to end Britain's slave trade and as well reform the corroding values of England. Probably a lot of your viewers saw Amazing Grace, this film that was out a few years ago. It's a great representation of him. Well, the Wilberforce Award is presented both to encourage Christians to follow its recipient's example and to demonstrate to the secular world the benefits of Christian influence in society. And so each year, our board of directors get together, and there's a number of names submitted, and they deliberate and vote on that individual based on a certain set of criteria that we have. And this year we began looking at who really stepped up to take a strong stance in the faith of injustice. And one person was clearly head and shoulders above the crowd in our estimation. And so this year we're awarding His Eminence Cardinal Timothy Dolan, who's the Archbishop of New York and President of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. He'll receive the award this year in recognition for his outspoken advocacy for life, marriage, and religious freedom, and including his leadership in the movement to stand against the HHS mandate that I'm sure you've talked about many times, and the new laws which require employers, including religious groups like ours and others, to provide insurance to employees that includes contraception, abortion-inducing drugs, and sterilization coverage, despite religious objectives. And so that's really a very important issue that Cardinal Dolan has really helped to rally not only the Catholic Church, but the broader church in America around.
You know, his outspoken views, and I think some that we have become very familiar with, when he gave invocations both at the Democratic Convention and the Republican Convention, he clearly drew some lines in the sand to what he stands for, and that catapulted him forward. And quite frankly, I think it woke up a lot of Protestants that we have a relationship here. We need to work together.
Yeah, we call that co-belligerency. We may not agree with every theological position that they have, but we certainly can believe in the big points. We trust Christ as our Savior, and we can go forward in that kind of an effort, arm in arm. The idea being that we're being watched by the secular world out there, and if the church can go at this collectively together in a positive way, it shows strength. We can keep our little differences and squabbles in the back rooms, hopefully.
He has been noted as perhaps America's Pope. At the same time, I think he was on the short list to become Pope, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And of course, we watched that closely as they went through the process of electing the most recent Pope. And of course, he was quite prominent on television and on the news over the past months, really doing a good job of representing the Catholic Church in the media.
If HHS continues to go down the road that they're doing and threatening the Catholic Church and other institutions of faith, at that point we will have to bind together to fight these things.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the Manhattan Declaration, which was really something that Chuck Colson and Robbie George and Timothy George, whom you've also had on in the past month on your program, really targeted and addressed these issues of life and marriage and religious liberties as three fundamental components of our faith and of society. And so I think for many years, we as Christians likely have taken our religious liberties for granted. And now all of a sudden they're being attacked with HHS mandate. Same-sex marriage is going to be coming in, it appears, and potentially that's going to be a huge issue with religious liberties as well, in that, you know, we're going to all be forced to have to hire and take care of the insurance and benefits and all that for the same-sex couples. So that all works against our conscience in terms of what we feel God would have us do.
Alan, what's ahead for the center? What are you guys doing, and what's ahead for you?
The Colson Center for Christian Worldview is very much about trying to grow a movement of Christians who are committed to living out and defending the Christian worldview. And so we're very much engaged in that effort. We have our broadcasts that are on radio each day, over 1,400 outlets, the Breakpoint radio commentaries that are hosted by Eric Metaxas and John Stonestreet. Many of your viewers may know of Eric Metaxas, who wrote the New York Times bestseller on Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And we have a number of websites, colsoncenter.org being our primary one. But then secondly, we focus a lot on leadership development. And our Centurion program is a program where we train up leaders in Christian worldview thought and practice. To date, we will have about 850 of these commissioned centurions that are out around this country helping to lead efforts in their local communities. And then finally, we're looking to develop coalitions that would help to bring about collaboration with other like-minded Christian organizations and individuals that could help us advance this effort, this movement at the local basis. In fact, we focus our attention on a little paper that's been written that could be found at our website called What We Seek. And the idea is, how do we develop a kingdom vision for the communities where we live and help to plant that in our communities and make a difference? I think we all lamented over the fact that this last election, we lost in a big way. We spent lots of money, millions of dollars, and many of which were committed by Christians. And what did we get out of it? Nothing. And so the idea is, how do we now infiltrate into the communities and get this whole idea, like William Wilberforce had, of reforming the manners or helping to reestablish our culture and our society around a kingdom vision for our communities? That's going to take a long time. It took William Wilberforce 35 years to see the abolition of the slave trade. So we need to set up and hunker down and develop strategies that are much more longer term with this kingdom vision in place.
You know, with the overwhelming encroachment upon our faith and beliefs in this present culture, and in particular this present administration, do you see a swelling in the way of a pushback and maybe putting things back on track?
Well, we're hosting this week, prior to the Wilberforce weekend on our campus, about 40 different organizations that are coming together to talk about this very issue. There seems to be a move that a lot of organizations are thinking about. How do they help the local church in the communities and cities where they live to bring about this whole idea of a kingdom vision? And so we're bringing together all these folks to continue to talk on strategy, but more importantly, to talk about how we can serve the local church in this kind of practice, and see if maybe the church can get awakened once again to participate and be engaged in cultural activities. Chuck Colson used to say, the culture is very much driven by the cult, and the cult of our day has always been the church. And so when we see culture failing, could it be that the church has failed? And so we really need to think through, how does the church re-engage and, in a winsome way, affect all spheres of influence in the communities where we live, whether it's education, government, the arts, and the government, all areas, and have that influence that would help to really re-engage communities in a way that God would have planned them to look like and be.
Well, Alan, you're a delight. Thank you so much for the work you do there at the Chuck Colson Center for Christian Worldview. If people want to get in touch with your organization and support it, what do they do?
Simply, they can come to the colsoncenter.org, colsoncenter.org website, and there's ways in which to lead you through all of our various websites. We have websites that would help pastors and church leaders. We have the Breakpoint website, which is our daily commentary on the news and all of that. So that's the best way to connect with us, and there's email addresses there as well. Well,
again, thank you, and the best to you as the Cardinal steps up to receive your award. When's that going to take place?
It's going to happen this Saturday evening at the Renaissance Capitol View Hotel in Washington, D.C., and we're looking forward to a great gathering there that evening. And we're also going to be paying tribute to Chuck Colson after his 1 year of being gone, and trying to continue to live out the legacy and forge the legacy that he left with us. So it's going to be a great weekend.
I wish I could be there. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Blessings to you. Keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you, Perry. Bless you.
All right. Well, it's going to be a great event. Hey, coming up next, Dr. Greg Smalley is going to be with us. He's one of the co-hosts of a brand new program, Everyday Relationships, heard at 2 o'clock, weekday afternoons on the Dove Radio. He'll be our special guest next here on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, one of the new programs that you're hearing daily now, weekdays on the Dove Radio at 2 o'clock, is a live call-in show produced by Focus on the Family. It's called Everyday Relationships. And hosting that show is Dr. Greg Smalley along with Susie Larson. We had Susie on the other day. But today, we're delighted to have the man himself, Dr. Greg Smalley, with us. Hi, Greg. How you doing?
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for the program. You guys are touching a lot of nerves out there with all the topics you're carrying.
I tell you what, it's so much fun. You know, we start every show talking about the greatest commandment, so to love God, to love others as you love yourself, and we really think, you know, when you think about relationships, God, others, and self, man, that's about it. So if we can just figure out how to do those three well, then I think that we're living out that greatest commandment. So it's kind of unfair to start your show with the greatest commandment. It's kind of cheating, but we figured why not?
Well, you know, of all the topics you could deal with in counseling and the things that you've been trained in, schooled in, relationships touches everybody almost at every level.
Absolutely. You know, because one, I mean, this is how we were created. We are created to be in relationship, and that's a part of our DNA. We all want to do that. We want to do that well, but that's where Satan's going to attack us. You know, I think about, you know, even some of the ministries that I've been involved in over the years. You know what? It's not usually the external threats that get us into trouble. It's that we implode. You know, the conflict within the ministry, that within our relationships. That's usually where it goes wrong. I mean, you think of churches, and that's why we're just so passionate to go, you know what, let's just be real. I mean, the thing that I wanted more than anything, and Susie and I talked a lot about this, is that let's be honest, let's be real. I'm going to tell, man, I blew it. My 16-year-old daughter last night, she was so frustrated with me as we're just laying in bed trying to work through something. I mean, it's messy. Relationships are messy. Why can't we have somewhere where we don't have to put on the mask, we don't have to pretend everything's so hunky-dory? Why can't we just talk about relationships and use story and figure out how do we do these better?
You know what's so interesting in this high-tech world in which we live, Greg? It's amazing. We're texting every second of the day, it seems like, or taking an email or something. So we're in contact with somebody, and yet the number one feeling out there in America is loneliness. How in the world can you draw a line between the two there?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. I was texting. Now, what did you say? Just kidding. You know, it is. Because, one, I mean, I don't think that's real connection. Just because that we're holding a smartphone and we're texting, you know, 15,000 times a day, that's not real connection. As a matter of fact, you know, I believe that our younger generation, one of the things that really concerns me relationally for them is that, you know, we know communication-wise that words represent only about 7% of the communication of the message. You know, the body language, tone, I mean, all that factors in more. But yet you think about Facebook and social media and texting, we put such a huge emphasis on words. And, you know, Ecclesiastes 7:21 says, don't pay attention to every word that someone says. And I really do think that that's part of the challenge is how do we teach people, you know, to not depend upon that stuff. Let's get back to learning how to really relate differently, because you're right, loneliness is a huge problem. I think, as a matter of fact, my opinion is that loneliness is the worst of all human emotions to experience, because it's exactly opposite of how God created us. He wants us in relationship, not feeling lonely.
Are we expecting too much in perfection in the way of communication?
You know, I think that we expect too much out of words, and 70% of all communication is miscommunication. I think that most people, we don't think about that. We hear something, we instantly draw the conclusion, we believe we're right. I accurately understood what was just being said, whereas, part of what we try to do in the show is keep reminding people, no, your expectations should be that everything you hear, you've probably misunderstood it. Thus, you need to seek that out. You need to ask. You need to clarify. And I think when we do that, then we stand a much better chance. But the reality is, when my wife's talking, I've got my own stuff going on. I'm hearing her through my filter, and that's not great communication. But yet we all do it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just be honest and let's talk about how do we do that better. And that's what we want from the show.
Let me just say to our viewers and listeners again, Dr. Greg Smalley is the co-host of a program called Everyday Relationships, and it's heard weekdays at 2 o'clock live on the Dove Radio. All right, Greg, you've authored a book called Fight Your Way to a Better Marriage, How Healthy Conflict Can Take You to Deeper Levels of Intimacy, and pretty powerful book. How much is your life in here?
Oh, my goodness, a whole bunch. Because I think, if nothing else, I learned a ton from my father, Gary Smalley. One of the things is that how transparent he is. And I'm drawn to his stories. I've heard them a billion times, but yet I still, to this day, when he starts to tell one of the stories, I'm just drawn. I think it makes me feel safer when I know that, hey, he's not perfect either. And so that's what we try to do. Even on this radio program every day, we're telling a different story from our own life. But in terms of conflict, for me, I was always afraid of conflict. Didn't want to rock the boat. I just thought that if you fight, it's going to go in a bad place, and I didn't want that. And sadly, I didn't really understand the true power of conflict. Conflict, and let me say that differently, healthy conflict is the doorway to intimacy and deeper connection. In other words, if my wife Erin and I choose to walk through conflict and learn to do that in a good way, boy, this is where I learn more about her. I understand her more, what she needs, what she wants, how she's feeling. There's so much that I can use from conflict. One of my very favorite stories is 2 weeks into our marriage. We were just laying in bed, and Erin said, "Hey, I've been meaning to ask you, how am I doing as a wife?" Now, there's probably a lot that I should have said. Unfortunately, I went with fine, and I didn't know that women hate that word. As a matter of fact, she explained that fine really stands for feelings inside not expressed. And so she's a nurse, and so she circled back on this thought and said, all right, well, let me ask it this way, 0 to 10. 10, the best job I'm doing as a wife, 0, the worst. How would you rate me?
Oh.
So, like an idiot.
Well, that was a no-win situation.
No. It should have been so simple, but I actually thought about this, and I thought I came with the perfect number. I ended up rating her a 9.3. It makes no sense.
No.
Where the 0.3 came from. I should have said a 1. It would have been the same net effect.
Yeah.
But tell you what, boy, instantly we were in conflict. She's crying. I'm defending myself. To the point, though, that what I walked away from, and what I think we both took away later on, and this is the value of conflict, okay, is that I learned, I didn't know that my wife grew up in a real perfectionistic home. So nothing she ever did ever felt good enough, and she never measured up. As a matter of fact, she graduated high school with a 4.3 GPA. When I first heard that, I thought she was making that up.
Wow.
I didn't think it was possible. She's like, oh, no, you can take honors classes. I was like, well, no one invited me into an honors class. But on her graduation day, 1,000 students, she graduated number 3 in her class. And her mom, who's a dear woman, loves the Lord, came up next to her and said, honey, I'm so proud of you. Now imagine if you just had applied yourself a little bit more, you could have been number 1.
Oh.
Never meant it the way that came across. So I'm not slamming my mother-in-law. I love her. But that's the kind of thing. So here my wife kind of grew up never feeling good enough. Here she wanted her husband, after 2 weeks, to validate her, to show her that she measures up. And I didn't get it. I learned that day that when I make mistakes, that it pushes kind of a button in me that I call failure. I feel like a failure. So, I mean, seriously, Aaron and I, from that experience, we dealt with it, we handled it, and we both learned something that day. That's the power of conflict. If we just learn how to manage it. So really, that whole book is just really given some clear ways to kind of walk through that doorway of conflict to the deepest levels of intimacy. I'm telling you, it's possible.
You know, you have a lot of practical tips in here, too, and how to identify feelings and people. And let me just encourage folks to check it out. It's called Fight Your Way to a Better Marriage by Dr. Greg Smalley, put out by Focus on the Family. And you may want to check it out at Evangel and or Christian Discount Books, or even online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. You know, one other question. I know you're on a real tight schedule, and I want to respect that. What is the main issue behind a fight?
You know, it really comes down to this, that we all have buttons. I mean, you know the expression, oh, he pushed my button, she hit my button. Mm-hmm. You know, buttons mean just their deeper emotions. We all have sort of these sensitive emotions that are buried kind of deep, that they get triggered when someone says or does something. And so, like that night when we were in conflict, see, my failure button got triggered. Aaron's invalidated, don't measure up button got triggered. And I think the greatest thing that we've learned in handling and managing our conflicts is you first need to understand, well, what button just got pushed? Because, see, when your buttons get pushed, your heart closes instantly. It's like that little roly-poly bug. And then you react to each other. You might say things, argue, get angry, or you might, withdraw and move away and shut down. But the bottom line is, when those buttons get pushed, that's the real issue. It's not money. It's not talking about the kids. It's not it's not the topic. It's the fact that you just got a button pushed. Now your heart's closed. Now you're reacting. That's pushing their button, and you get spinning in this cycle. That's what we try to help people to understand what the real issue is. Because when you can deal with the real issue, then you can learn how to deal with conflict better. And that's, we don't do it perfectly. But I tell you, Aaron and I now know what to do eventually. So even if we don't handle it right, last night with my daughter, I didn't handle this right. She pushed my buttons, and I reacted to her. But, later on, I was able to deal with me and kind of get my heart back open. And then my daughter, Murphy, and I had a good, productive conversation. So, I've been teaching it forever. It doesn't work perfect, but I know what to do eventually. That's the difference.
All right. Thank you, Greg. And again, I want to say to our viewers and listeners, you can hear Greg live with Susie every weekday at 2 o'clock on the Dove Radio. And Everyday Relationships, produced by Focus on the Family. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for committing to this, because I know doing an hourly show every day is a big commitment to your schedule and to your life, but the impact is phenomenal. So thanks for what you and Susie do.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, I had no idea. They sort of lied to me about how hard this would be. But I tell you what, I love it because we get to talk about real stuff. So, call in, ask questions. We'd love to talk about whatever relationship issue you might
you guys
have.
are very transparent with your lives. I commend you on that.
Well, God keeps blessing me with story after story after story. So I wish he'd quit, but I'll just go ahead and share them.
Okay.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
All right, thanks, Greg. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Greg Smalley with us today. Again, you can hear Everyday Relationships live at 2 o'clock during the Dove, on the Dove Radio. Every afternoon, it's live from Focus on the Family, so be sure to check it out. I think you'll find it to be a very great resource in your life. All right, we'll be right back. You're on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, we're back, and really delighted to have in the studio with us today Dave Fiedler. He's a speaker, a writer, an author, and you're doing a week's conference at the Adventist Church in Grants Pass. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Now, first of all, your book. You did a book called Hide and Sight. That was back in 1996. You have a copy of that there?
I have a copy here.
And that one quickly is about?
It's church history. It's just selected episodes of church history that I thought were of interest and value and maybe underreported. So it's pretty simple stuff.
All right. And your other book, give me the title.
The title is DeSozo.
DeSozo. All right. I was going to say that, but I wasn't sure. Okay. And that is?
It's keyed off of the root word, the Greek root word sozo, which to me was fascinating when I heard this. It's used as it's used in the New Testament for both physical healing. So when Jesus said, "Go in peace, your faith has made you well," that "made you well" is a form of sozo. And when the angel told Mary, he said, "You shall name him Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins." That "save" is sozo. So it's both physical healing and spiritual salvation. And in the ministry of Christ, he always combined those.
Wow, fascinating. All right, you're doing it's called the Week of Prayer, but you're combining also a unique relationship about what you just talked about, and that is healthcare and Christianity. What's the main message of your presentation?
The main message is kind of encapsulated in that title.
Yeah.
You know, that in Scripture, healing and salvation are always in a close relationship. When Christ sent out the disciples, you know, to preach the gospel, he always told them to heal the sick. You know, and so the main thought there, the take-home thought that I hope people will get out of the meetings is, we can still do that today. You know, we don't have to all be brain surgeons or something. You know, we can minister to the physical, practical needs of people, even in simple ways. You know, a little old lady needs some help. You can rake her yard. You know, it's not brain surgery. It's not, you know, but it's still that same kind of physical ministry that Christ did all through the Gospels.
Have you ever seen? Well, it appears today that we have more disease and illness than ever.
Yeah.
Is there a connection here?
Yes. You know, there's an interesting thing, it seems to me. When Christ was here, present on earth, he used the relationship of healing with salvation. He used the physical healing as an illustration of what men needed. Okay? Okay. And what, you know, at the time, of course, the big emphasis was essentially Pharisaism, you know. We are obedient. We are, you know, we can be our own saviors, is what it boils down to pretty much. And Christ came along and he demonstrated that, you know what, it takes a miraculous touch. You're not going to do that by yourself, okay? In our day, I think the same message is applicable in a sense, but it's flipped on its head, because our emphasis today is not so much, you'll find it pockets, you know, there's always exceptions, but our overall emphasis is not so much kind of a hardline Phariseeism. It's maybe more of a cheap grace, kind of ignore what the Lord's asked us to do sometimes, you know. And so I think if Christ were here today, what he would be emphasizing is there is natural law. And by obedience to the simple principles of the guidelines of health in the Bible, which he stressed in his ministry, we can further our health, which is an illustration that, yeah, he asks us to be obedient. You know, if we choose him as our Savior, we choose him as our King.
Well, there's a stewardship issue here.
Yes, there is.
And the stewardship issue is, you know, taking care of the temple.
Yes.
And we perhaps now have subverted that with all of the modern things that we have in our culture. That's number one. But number two is that there is this incredible increase of sickness, and diabetes is through the roof, and these things. Where have we violated God in this, in your opinion?
Whatsoever therefore ye eat or drink, do all to the glory of God. Diabetes is, type 2 diabetes is almost always, there are exceptions, but almost always addressable through diet and exercise and lifestyle. And if you will take a radical stance, usually you can get somebody off their medications in 11 to 15 days.
Really?
Yeah.
That's radical.
It is.
But I know that the records there should prove that.
It is true, yeah.
Okay. How does health and sharing the gospel work?
Just as Christ used health as a way to win hearts and to win their attention to him, I think God's followers today can do the same thing. We are called to minister. And you know, when Paul went out on his missionary journey, he took Luke along with him. Luke was a physician.
Yeah, right. So
this blending of the evangelical and the medical, or the health, or the practical, I think it's a great thing. It's our job is to go out and to touch lives and to win hearts. First, to listen to us, but not because we're important, but so that we can say, "I'd like you to meet my friend." You know, I'd like you to meet the Lord, and it's a powerful witness. It's a powerful tool.
Wow. Where does prayer come into this?
Prayer is vital, because always there will be the fact that, we're not going to do this by ourselves. It always, salvation and even, every breath we take. Come on, it's a gift from God, okay?
Right, right.
So prayer comes in as an acknowledgement of His supremacy and of our petitioning Him for His grace and, our response of love and obedience.
Are we missing something in the way of seeking God for physical miracles?
Probably. Just being human beings, we're usually missing something.
Yeah, no, but I just, I realize there's a stewardship issue for us.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I get that part of the argument, I really do. But at the same time,
when
Jesus did miracles.
Yes, He did. Yes, He did.
He reversed things. He changed things.
I've seen miracles as well. I honestly have. Sometimes they're couched more almost in what you would call natural. I mean, hey, for somebody who's been on medications for years to get off, to be free from their diabetes, their insulin,
right.
in 15 days, that's pretty close to a miracle. But then there are other cases where it's just miracle, where there's no physical explanation for it whatsoever. And the Lord's still in the business. I think that the focus may have shifted a little bit. The preponderance. Jesus worked more miracles than we would say natural healing, if you watch. And it may be flipped a little bit the other way now, but the Lord's still in the business. We should always petition.
All right, and let me just say to our viewers and listeners that Dave is speaking this week. They're in Grants Pass, and it's called the Week of Prayer, and which is fascinating because you're also tying healthcare and Christianity. Healthcare is a big issue today.
It is.
And we are looking to the government to take care of it, to pay for it, to do all of these things. And yet it seems that the quality of the care is hard to find.
It is.
And to be happy with.
Nobody's happy.
The efficiency of it is, that's fallen through the floor. How do you respond to that?
Back in the days of ancient Israel, the priests were the physicians. If you had leprosy, you didn't go to some extra special guy. You went to the temple and you talked with the priest. He was the one who held sway, and for many, for millennia, this binding up of the gospel and of healing, they were united. John Wesley wrote a book on medicine.
Right.
The Waldenses, they were also physicians. So it's an amazing thing. Today, I think that there's a stewardship. There's the self responsibility issue. That's an important thing.
Right.
But there's also the fact that we are to minister one to another. And if the Lord gives a skill, I have an obligation to use that to bless my brothers and sisters in Christ.
Cancer seems to be rampant.
Yes.
I mean, let's face it, it's epidemic. Well, I think we're having a hard time using that word, but from what I see, it's epidemic.
It is.
Is that a result of polluting the food supply in some way or shape?
It's there's no question that is a factor. Probably, and this is a hard sell sometimes, but probably the biggest factor that is most easily traceable back, or most easily addressed by the individual is actually the consumption of animal products. The world is growing old and it's waxing old like a garment, and really if you look into the nutrition and even like Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton's gone vegetarian because the science is recognizing that we're actually better off. And it's interesting because it harks all the way back to Genesis 1, where Christ, where God created Adam and Eve, and He gave them originally a vegetarian diet.
Well, I mean, it's really on the increase of popularity.
It is.
I mean, huge. I mean, even among young people, which is quite interesting.
Maybe especially among young people, I think, yeah.
Wow. Well, so what's your topic tonight?
Topic tonight is I'm covering some history of the development of actually about 100 years ago as the medical work was expanding, and actually the concept of modern medicine in America was changing, and how that affected the development of church-related healthcare.
Do you think, and I know in the Adventist Church there's a great connect between health reform and spiritual growth. A huge connect. Where is that going? I mean, do you see that growing?
I think it's growing, and to be honest, I think where it's coming, as I see it, the Lord is working. He wants to bring His people higher. We need a better witness. We need, and to do that, everything. That Paul says, let your mind be renewed. There is a growing body of scientific evidence relating health of body with function of mind, and especially what we know as the frontal lobe, which is the seat of intelligence and moral decision. It's the first part of the brain to suffer when the diet's bad.
Really?
When the exercise isn't there, when you get too much fat floating around through the blood system, the frontal lobe reacts differently than every other part of the brain, and it starts shutting down quicker. So I think that basically God's calling His people mentally and spiritually and physically to a higher plane. And this is not a works righteousness thing, but as we clear the channel, He's able to communicate with us better and reveal His will and help us understand it and move forward. Very
well said. Where can people get a copy of your books?
Well, the one is actually out of print. It's an older book. DeSozo is... I'll be honest, it's a narrow circulation. The publisher is an outfit called Remnant Publications. You can find them on the internet.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, thanks for coming in. It's fascinating because I think healthcare, health reform, and even healthy living is very much on the minds of everybody today. It seems like the cancer issue has made us more health conscious. And I guess there's a ton of related things that go with that.
There are.
And there seems to be an excessive amount of the Alzheimer's, that whole issue with of that kind of illness later on in life. And even in younger life, we're saying, where does this come from? How come all of a sudden now we're dealing with all this stuff?
Yeah, and it's largely lifestyle related. If you go to the indigenous, the more simple lifestyles, they don't have some of those things at all. So it tells us that there are things yet we maybe don't have the answers to, but we need to be looking.
Okay. Well, you can hear Dave. He's speaking tonight and tomorrow night and Saturday morning.
Saturday morning,
at the Adventist Church there in Grants Pass. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Okay, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.